Okay, so I start. Okay, accept. Okay, thank you very much. I set the timer. Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I apologize for not being able to be in person in Oslo, but this is a very intensive teaching period, and I have classes just after this seminar. I'm Vera Palea from the University of Torino, Department of Economics and Statistics, and I'm professor in corporate reporting and finance. I would like to start by saying that I'm very pleased to be here with you, legal experts, today, because I think that your research is particularly important and crucial for society, because regulations define societal infrastructure, the rule of games, and I believe that they can orient both companies and individual behavior, hopefully toward sustainable development and sustainable businesses. As I was saying, I'm from the University of Torino. Torino is in Italy at the very cross border, as you can see from the placeholder on Google Map, at the very border with France, so northwest of Italy. In the middle of the slides, you can see my campus, where I am now, right now, and some beautiful things from Torino. If you look at the middle top box, you can see a view of Torino with the Olympic Games, the 2006 Olympic Games mountains at the back, some castles, because until 100 years ago, we were a monarchy, a kingdom. And then in Torino, there is also the second largest museum in the world about ancient Egypt. So I invite you to visit Torino, to come to my campus as soon as you can and you want. Before moving towards to the core topic of this seminar, of my seminar, my presentation, I would like to join to connect my presentation also to the lectures by Eleanor on socially oriented research. And I think that socially oriented research, which means also socially engaged research, is particularly important nowadays, because it plays an important role in trying to change society according to sustainability criteria. And I think that this is a very fruitful period for policy-oriented research and socially oriented research. There are a lot of opportunity spaces for policy-oriented research. And this is because there are the conditions. There are now some conditions manifesting that can help us as researchers to be very policy-oriented. And these factors are, in my opinion, and I will use some categories from political philosophy. I will refer to Machiavelli, who was a political philosopher, Italian political philosopher from the Renaissance. These conditions are proper context, committed leadership, and support. I think that the context that Machiavelli would call fortuna is given by the dramatic environmental climate changes we are experiencing, along with increasing inequality, which requires policymakers to act. So requires action. And the European Union is, with trial and errors, trying to assume this leadership with its policies and regulations. So this is the context, the conditions. The European Union is trying to take the leadership, which is what Machiavelli would call virtue. And then there is the third condition, which is support. And I think that support can be offered by academic research, providing informed output, providing output for policy making. And this is what I always tried to do in my career, trying to have to do a very policy-oriented research. And I would like, before moving to the core topic of the seminar, to give you some example with my latest research, my latest articles, which are also very connected to law, to corporate governance law, or in this case, to the corporate sustainability due diligence directive. For instance, in this paper, To Green or Not to Green, we investigated which corporate governance mechanisms are effective in improving the likelihood that banks do green lending. And so in this way, they can support their transition, and which corporate governance mechanisms are instead more symbolic. And this was our contribution to the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, because through these studies we could detect which corporate governance mechanisms are effective and so needs to put in place, and which are more reputational, more symbolic, but they do not increase the likelihood that banks can reorient their green lending towards towards the transition. Another very recent study was this one that we titled Just Blah, 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 because we tested how equity investors react to policy announcement. In this article, our hypothesis was that stock markets behave sustainable only if there are very defined and oriented rules. Otherwise, they keep on prioritizing returns over sustainability selection criteria in their asset allocation. So what we did, we studied how stock market reacted to the COP26. And we studied abnormal returns. Abnormal returns are stock market reaction to specific information. And we studied the specific information connected to policy announcement during the COP26. As you can see from the figure on the slide, if there is a decreasing trend in abnormal return, this suggests a reallocation away from, I forgot to say that the sample we used are from the most polluting firms. So we focus on most polluting firms. And in this figure on abnormal return, you can see that if you have a decrease in a decreased trend in price, this suggests an asset reallocation away from the high polluting sectors towards less polluting sectors. And this is what happened regarding the EU companies, because there were very strong European Union announcement about regulation and directives. Whereas, as you can see from the China trend, the China during the COP26 decided to switch from the phase out to the phase down for coal plants. And so investors reallocated their portfolio, buying the most polluting firms. And this suggests again that if there are very strong policies, so it's very clear where policymakers want to go, the stock market behave sustainable. Otherwise, stock market keep on going, prioritizing returns over sustainable issues. Okay, the paper here, these studies on the slides, which are also the one I suggested as readings, are studies on the relationship between accounting regulation and sustainable development or social market economy. I use sustainable development and social market economy as interchangeables, although I know that they are not perfectly overlapping because social market economy emphasizes the social aspect of sustainable development. However, in these papers, I focus on the relationship between accounting regulation and sustainable development or social market economy, and why I decided to focus on this relation between accounting regulation and sustainable development, because my reasoning was the following. First of all, sustainable development and social market economy are two core objectives and fundamental values of the European Union as set out by the Lisbon Treaty. And in fact, the Lisbon Treaty states that the European Union shall work for sustainable development and a highly competitive social market economy. So this was the first step. The second step was that the Lisbon Treaty defines EU competencies and accounting regulation is included in internal market competencies. So it is up to the European level, is one European Union competencies, and it is therefore regulated by directives and regulations. So if I examine accounting regulation, I have to consider that accounting regulation is at the European level. Next step is that if I consider the hierarchy of laws, European regulations and directives rank lower than the Lisbon Treaty. So my idea was that any European regulation, including accounting regulation, must be consistent with the Lisbon Treaty. So the accounting regulation should be tested against the objective of sustainable development and social market economy, and any regulation in general which endangers sustainability, which is core to the European Union, to the Lisbon Treaty, is inconsistent with the Lisbon Treaty and therefore unconstitutional. So this is why when I examine the accounting regulation, I always examine it in the framework of the Lisbon Treaty and against the objective of sustainable development or social market economy. I have to say that, okay, this paper that are on this slide, I wrote them in 2017, 2018, and then I was an academic fellow at EFRAG in Brussels in 2019, and I shared all these works with the European Commission, with some officials of the European Commission, and I believe that they played a role because some doubts started taking hold in the mind of the European Commission. And in fact, the European Commission, for the first time in the action plan on sustainable finance, raised some concern about the potential detrimental role of IFRS, in particular fair value measurement, on long-term equity investments. And for the first time, the European Commission opened to adjustment to accounting standards that can endanger the objective of sustainable development. So the European Commission has become increasingly aware of a potential tension between the accounting regulation and the objective of sustainable development. So, against this background, having said this, I thought that it was important to support policymakers with evidence on two key issues. The first was if financial reporting rules and financial accounting regulation can really affect the objective of sustainable development. So it is important to understand whether financial reporting regulation can be considered a tool for political economy. And in the second point, I thought it was important to understand if the current regulatory framework in financial reporting is consistent with the European Union's fundamental objective of sustainable development. So, taking into consideration these two research questions, I tried to tackle these two research questions through an article titled "Is Accounting a Matter for Bookkeepers Only? The Effect of IFRS Adoption on Real Investment." And in this paper, I wanted to be very empirical and to address the issue of the consistency of IFRS regulation with the objective of sustainable development using a very empirical approach, which is the approach used, the so-called positive approach to research of the mainstream. And I wanted to use, I would say, tools, research tools, which are typical of the mainstream, to tackle a very critical topic, to tackle a very critical issue. Why it is so important to discuss, in particular, IFRS regulation against the objective of sustainable development? Because IFRS were adopted in the European Union with the European regulation. So were adopted with the European regulation, and the purpose of this European regulation was to introduce IFRS to increase information transparency through the adoption of mark-to-market or mark-to-model measurement, which means fair value measurements. In this way, reducing the cost of capital for companies and thereby unlocking corporate investment. So the purpose of IFRS regulation was to increase information transparency, in this way reducing the cost of capital for companies, and in this way unlocking corporate investment. So the final objective was to trigger to unlock corporate investment. But the point is that critical research instead has pointed out that fair value accounting does not actually unlock corporate investment, but is exactly the other way around, because fair value accounting increases dividend payout and share buybacks, which are often financed by debt, leaving so little fund for investments. So there was the issue of a possible tension between the final aim of IFRS regulation on the one hand and the unintended consequences of its application. Underinvestment is a very important, is a very critical issue because underinvestment is a critical issue for targeting climate change mitigation and adaptation goals, and so is a critical issue for environmental sustainability. So it's important to understand whether IFRS regulation indeed led to underinvestment, because in this case, there can be a tension between the IFRS regulation and the objective of sustainable development, so environmental sustainability. So as I said, I try to be very empirical, because critical research in accounting tend to be very qualitative or based on literary review. Also, many of my previous articles were very qualitative, normative, based on the review of different research streams. I thought that it was now time to be very empirical and to, as I said, using the same tool of the mainstream to address a very critical issues. So I wrote this article with Andy Elden, who was a chief economist at the Bank of England. And I asked him to join me in this work, because I thought that it was very important to have an excellent scholar and with excellent skills in econometrics. So to make this paper as much as robust. And the purpose of this paper, the research purpose, was twofold. First, to test IFRS adoption against the final aim of IFRS regulation, which was to increase investment, and against the objective of sustainable development, but also to demonstrate that accounting is not just a matter for bookkeepers, but can be used as a tool for political economy, because usually accounting is something very neglected also by economists, consider something as something for just bookkeepers, just a mechanical process representing firms, facts pertaining to firms with no other economic consequences. And we wanted to show instead that accounting can be used as a tool for political economy. So what we did in this paper was to use a large amount of data over a long period of time. We observed firms that switched from DGAAP, where DGAAP are the national accounting standards based on the previous directive applying in Europe for listed companies. The GAP still apply for non-listed company. And okay, and we looked at these companies over 20 years, and we collected data about investment measures, where our main investment measures was cash flow, but we all cash flow expenditure, but we also use other measures, and then we used as a proxy for investment opportunities Tobin's Q or sales growth. And what we wanted to check was whether switching from the GAP to IFRS, the corporate sensitivity to investment investment opportunities has decreased over time. The descriptive statistics already confirmed our hypothesis, because as you can see from this figure, IFRS firms tend to invest less than the GAP firms in all the sectors. And we also found at the descriptive descriptive statistics level, but investment level after IFRS adoption actually became less sensitive to investment opportunity. While on the other hand, financial payment after IFRS adoption increased. So these descriptive statistics were in line with a process of financialization of companies which could be triggered by IFRS adoption. After descriptive statistics, we performed, of course, an econometric model regression, which included a lot of control variables. We tested how investment changed depending on changes in investment opportunities under IFRS and under the GAAP, but we controlled for a wide variety of other factors, which could be firm characteristics, of course, so book leverage, financial payment, life cycle stage, etc., but also for external factors, because we controlled also for differences in interest rates, in also changes in technological changes, because we consider a very long period. We controlled for country, years, sectors, fixed effect in order to make this regression model as much as possible robust. And our results confirmed our hypothesis, because if we look at the table, and let's consider the first column where we have CapEx, so capital expenditure, we can see in red the detrimental effect by IFRS adoption on investment given a certain investment opportunity. And our results confirmed that in more or less, if we consider again, if you see investment opportunities, the coefficient is 0.013, while under IFRS is 0.009, which means that the sensitivity coefficient on investment to Tobin's Q is 0.69 times lower than under the GAAP. So our results confirm our hypothesis that, first of all, under IFRS, firms tend to invest less, which is in contrast to the final aim of IFRS regulation, which was to unlock corporate investment. And this has important implications for policy making, because it suggests that if there is underinvestment under IFRS, this can endanger also investment in the transition and also in adaptation. So it can hamper targeting the objective of environmental sustainability and the objective set out by the Paris Agreement. So our conclusion was that from a macroeconomic perspective, our analysis suggested that IFRS adoption could hinder investment in fixed assets and innovation, which are necessary to green the economy. And so this means that financial reporting rules have also a public policy profile. It's not something for just for bookkeepers. And these have a policy-making implication, of course, because there is a discussion about extending IFRS to private firms, which actually are the backbone of the European economy, are the key actor in driving the shift toward a more sustainable economic model. And so our results suggest that it's better not to extend IFRS adoption also to private firms. There is a big debate about corporate sustainability reporting. There is a lot of focus on sustainability reporting standards, but our study, our paper suggests that sustainability cannot develop in an adequate manner without a consistent financial reporting framework, which is key to support investments needed for the transition. So, in the end, our article suggests, our paper suggests that IFRS regulation is inconsistent with the Lisbon Treaty. So there is a constitutional issues regarding regulation, IFRS regulation. So this was just to give you some example of policy making oriented research in economics. How to give some idea of how I can try as economist also to serve lawyers' need, to policy making needs, and I think that it is important that as economists and business economists, accounting economists, we work in a way that can make accounting, which as it is now is a financialization tool, to a means for cultivating sustainability and common goods. Thank you very much. These are the references for the papers I presented and I show you. And thank you for the attention. Grazie per l'attenzione. I'm open to comments, questions, critiques, and whatever.